The ballroom looked exactly the way my wife would have wanted. White roses lined every table. Soft piano music drifted through the speakers. A giant screen behind the stage displayed 40 years of photographs from my career, my first day in a hard hat, ribbon cuttings, holiday parties, charity events, and one picture of me standing beside my late wife Eleanor, both of us laughing at something I can't even remember anymore. I stood in the center of the room alone. The catering staff kept glancing toward the entrance. One waiter checked his watch. Another whispered to the event coordinator. Nobody wanted to ask the obvious question. Where was everyone? I looked at my own watch. 6 o'clock. The retirement celebration was supposed to begin now. The invitations had asked guests to arrive 30 minutes early. My children had promised they'd be first through the doors. Instead, my phone vibrated. I smiled automatically. Probably Ryan telling me they were parking. Instead, I read, "Dad, we're going to Olivia's wedding instead. You've had 40 years at work. She only gets one wedding day. We'll celebrate with you next weekend. Love you." A second message appeared before I could even process the first. My daughter, Claire, "Please don't make this a big deal. Everyone already decided. Everyone. Not me decided. Everyone." Somehow the decision about missing the biggest day of my professional life had been made without ever asking the person it affected. I stared at the screen until it went dark. The event coordinator approached carefully. She couldn't have been older than 30. "Mr. Foster, I'm so sorry. We can postpone everything if you'd like." I looked around the ballroom again. 300 chairs, every centerpiece exactly where Eleanor had helped me imagine they'd be before cancer took her 2 years ago. She'd spent weeks helping me plan this evening. "You've spent your whole life celebrating everyone else," she'd said while sketching table layouts on the kitchen counter. "Promise me you'll let people celebrate you for once." I promised. And now, not a single member of my own family was coming. I slipped my phone into my pocket. "No," the coordinator looked confused. "We're not postponing." She hesitated. "But your guests," I didn't say cancel. I said begin on time. She gave me a puzzled look. "But the ballroom is almost empty." I smiled politely. "Not yet. My name is Richard Foster. I'm 65 years old. For 4 decades I worked as Director of Operations for Northbridge Community Medical Network. It wasn't glamorous work. Nobody writes movies about the man who keeps hospital generators running during snowstorms, or the person who finds emergency beds after tornadoes, or the administrator who sleeps in his office because patients still need meals during a blizzard. When everything worked, nobody noticed me. When something failed, everyone knew my name. I liked it that way. I wasn't chasing applause. I believed consistency mattered more than recognition. Maybe that's why I overlooked so many things inside my own family. Every birthday I paid for, every graduation trip, every emergency loan, every grandchild's college fund. I never kept score. Families aren't supposed to. Eleanor used to tease me. "You spoil them. They'll expect you to fix everything forever." I'd laugh. "What else are fathers for?" She'd smile, but she never agreed. "You keep rescuing people, Richard. One day they'll stop noticing the rescue. They'll only notice the day you finally say no." At the time, I thought she was being dramatic. Now, standing alone in a ballroom built to celebrate my life's work, I realized she'd been warning me. Not about strangers, about our own children. The hotel manager quietly walked over. "Mr. Foster, we've delayed serving dinner for 15 minutes. Should we wait longer?" I looked toward the entrance again. Nothing. No son. No daughter, no grandchildren running through the lobby. No familiar faces. Only employees pretending not to feel sorry for me. I took a slow breath. Then I asked, "Is the live stream ready?" The manager blinked. "Yes, cameras are already set up." "Good. Leave them on." He looked surprised. "Even if no one comes," I nodded. "Especially if no one comes." He walked away without another question. At exactly 6:15, the ballroom doors opened. I looked up. My heart jumped. For one brief second, I thought my family had changed their minds. But the first people walking through those doors weren't my children. They were 3 retired maintenance workers I hadn't seen in over 10 years. One of them smiled the moment he saw me. Then he spread his arms wide. "Richard, we wouldn't have missed this for the world." Behind him, more people kept walking in. Then more, then dozens more. None of them shared my last name. Every one of them had chosen to be there. I recognized almost every face that walked through those doors. Not because we had worked together recently. Some of them had retired 15 years ago. Some had transferred to other hospitals. One gentleman had walked with a cane ever since a warehouse accident back in 2008. Yet somehow, they had all remembered. Harold, our former electrician, wrapped me in a hug that nearly knocked my glasses off. "You really thought we'd let you retire without embarrassing you a little?" For the first time that evening, I laughed. A real laugh. Not the polite one I'd been wearing since reading my children's messages. More people kept arriving. Nurses, security officers, custodians, department managers, volunteers, former ambulance drivers, even 2 cafeteria cooks who had retired before COVID. The ballroom that had felt painfully empty 20 minutes earlier slowly filled with conversations, handshakes, and familiar faces. Not one of them asked where my family was, at least, not yet. The event coordinator hurried over. Her eyes were wide. "Mitt Foster, we're almost at 200 guests. I thought you said most people weren't coming." I smiled. "I thought so too." She glanced toward the registration table. "We're running out of name tags." I looked across the room. People weren't standing in little groups. They were introducing old coworkers to new ones, laughing, sharing memories. It looked less like a retirement party and more like a reunion that had been waiting years to happen. Just before 7 o'clock, a television crew rolled their cameras into the ballroom, then another. Apparently someone from the hospital's communications office had invited local media weeks ago. A young reporter approached me with a microphone. "Mr. Foster, would you mind answering a few questions before the ceremony begins?" I nodded. "Of course." She smiled warmly. 40 years is an incredible career. How does tonight feel?" I looked around the ballroom. "It feels unexpected." She laughed. "In a good way, I hope." "Very much so. What are you most proud of?" That question caught me off guard. Awards, projects, expansions. None of those came to mind. Instead, I pointed toward a table where several former employees were laughing together. The people. Buildings don't remember you. Budgets don't remember you. But people do. And if you're lucky, they remember how you treated them. The reporter smiled. "I think that's going to make a wonderful headline. If only she knew." The ceremony began with a standing ovation. I wasn't prepared for it. 300 people, standing, clapping, some cheering, others wiping tears from their eyes. I stood there completely speechless. Then Harold yelled from the back, "About time somebody thanked the guy who fixed everybody else's problems." The room erupted in laughter. I finally made it to the stage. One by one, people shared stories, not about my job, about moments I'd completely forgotten. A respiratory therapist stepped up first. "When my husband passed away, I couldn't afford daycare. Richard rearranged my schedule for 6 months. I never told anyone." An elderly janitor spoke next. "When my house caught fire, he organized volunteers before I even filed the insurance claim." A former intern smiled through tears. "I was ready to quit after making a terrible mistake. He told me, 'One bad day doesn't define a good person.'" I've repeated those words to my own employees for 20 years. Every story hit me harder than the last, because I honestly didn't remember doing half of them. To me, they had simply been ordinary days. Apparently, they had become unforgettable memories for someone else. Halfway through the evening, the large screen behind me changed. Instead of photographs from my career, a short video began playing. It wasn't made by the hospital. My daughter hadn't prepared it. My son hadn't either. It had been created by dozens of former coworkers. Each clip lasted only a few seconds. "Thank you, Richard. You gave me my first promotion. You stayed with my family in the emergency room until sunrise. You believed in me before I believed in myself." Then the final video appeared. It was Eleanor, recorded nearly 3 years earlier. I froze. She sat on our back porch wearing her favorite blue sweater, the same one she wore every autumn. She smiled directly into the camera. "If you're watching this." Then Richard finally retired. The ballroom became completely silent. I know my husband. He probably thinks tonight is about his career. It isn't. It's about the lives he quietly changed while nobody was looking. She laughed softly. "He'll probably be uncomfortable hearing everyone praise him. That's because he never understood something." She paused, then looked straight into the camera again. "The measure of a life isn't how many people work for you. It's how many people willingly show up when they don't have to." I couldn't stop the tears. Neither could anyone else. Even the cameraman lowered his lens for a moment. When the lights came back on, the reporter quietly walked toward me again. She lowered her microphone. I hope this isn't too personal, but your wife seemed extraordinary. She was. Where's your family tonight? For the first time, someone finally asked the question everyone had been avoiding. 300 people looked toward the stage, waiting. I could have embarrassed my children. I could have read their text messages aloud. I could have turned my retirement into their public trial. Instead, I simply smiled. They chose another celebration. The reporter frowned. They missed this. I nodded once. I hope they had a beautiful evening. That single answer would become the clip everyone shared. None of us knew it yet, but by morning, millions of people would hear those 8 quiet words. And somewhere across town, as my children laughed and danced at the wedding, someone was already uploading the video. The first call came at 7:42 that evening. My phone buzzed in the inside pocket of my jacket, while Harold was telling everyone about the time we had spent an entire Christmas Eve replacing a flooded hospital boiler. I glanced at the screen. Ryan, I silenced it. 30 seconds later, Claire called. Then Ryan again. Then Melissa within 5 minutes. There were 11 missed calls. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. For 40 years, whenever they needed me, I answered before the second ring. Tonight, someone else needed my attention. The ballroom was louder than ever. People weren't talking about my retirement anymore. They were talking about Eleanor, about the video, about the memories. Several guests walked over simply to hug me. One retired nurse smiled through tears. I've been to hundreds of retirement parties. I've never seen one feel like this. Neither had I. Meanwhile, across town, the wedding reception was just beginning. I didn't know it then. I only learned what happened later. Apparently, one of the wedding guests recognized me from the hospital interview that had just aired on the local evening news. He showed the clip to the people sitting at his table. Within minutes, another guest found the longer video online, then another. Soon, phones were appearing all over the ballroom. The bride thought people were posting wedding pictures. They weren't. They were watching my retirement speech. The reporter's interview had already been clipped into a 90-second video. It began with the empty ballroom, then showed it slowly filling with hundreds of former coworkers. Then Eleanor's message. Finally, my answer. They chose another celebration. I hope they had a beautiful evening. No anger, no accusation, no bitterness, just quiet dignity. People watching filled in the rest themselves. At 80:15, the reporter herself walked back over. She looked almost embarrassed. Mr. Foster, I thought you should know. What? Our station uploaded your interview. People are sharing it incredibly fast. I smiled politely. I'm not exactly social media material. She laughed. I don't think they're sharing you. They're sharing how you handled disappointment. She turned her phone toward me. The comments were pouring in. The family missed the wrong event. That answer broke my heart. Look at all the people who chose him. This man must have done something right. I handed the phone back. I didn't expect any of this. I believe you. An hour later, the ballroom doors opened again. This time, my son walked in, not smiling, not confident, breathing hard. Claire hurried in behind him. Melissa followed. All three looked as though they'd driven through every red light in the city. The room became completely silent. Hundreds of conversations stopped at once. Ryan walked toward me. Dad. I looked at him. He glanced around the packed ballroom. His voice disappeared. For the first time in his life, he had no speech prepared. Claire finally spoke. We didn't know. I nodded. I know. No. She shook her head quickly. We didn't know this was. She looked around the room. This. I understood exactly what she meant. They thought they had skipped a dinner. Instead, they had skipped 40 years. Ryan lowered his voice. Why came as soon as we saw the interview. As soon as you saw it. He nodded. The video went everywhere. I know. We're sorry. I looked toward the stage where Eleanor's picture was still displayed on the giant screen. Then back at my children. I believe you. Relief spread across their faces. Too early. Because I wasn't finished. I believe you're sorry. I just don't think you're sorry for the reason you should be. Ryan frowned. What do you mean? You aren't sorry because you hurt me. You're sorry because everyone else saw it. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything I'd experienced all evening. Neither of them denied it. Because they couldn't, the chairman of the hospital board quietly stepped beside me. He whispered, Richard. The announcement. I smiled. Yes, I think it's time. He nodded and walked onto the stage. The room settled into silence once again. Ladies and gentlemen, Tonight was supposed to celebrate one remarkable career, but before we conclude, we have one final announcement. Ryan looked confused. Claire glanced at me. Neither of them knew there had always been one last surprise planned for this evening. A surprise Eleanor had helped me prepare before she passed away. And it wasn't about retirement. It was about what came next. The chairman waited until every conversation in the ballroom had faded. Then he smiled. 2 years ago, Richard Foster told us he wanted his retirement gift to accomplish something more meaningful than a plaque. He asked us a question. He looked toward me. What happens to employees who are too young to retire, but too old for companies to hire? The chairman paused. We didn't have an answer. So Richard created one. The lights dimmed. A new logo appeared across the giant screen. The Leonard Foster seeks I found ETI and beneath it, a single sentence. Helping experienced workers start again. The room erupted into applause. Ryan stared at the screen. Claire slowly covered her mouth. Neither of them had ever heard those words before. The chairman continued. Over the last 3 years, Richard quietly funded this foundation using his personal retirement savings. It has already purchased 3 converted into career training centers. Beginning next month, workers over 50, 5 career jobs will receive free retraining, small business grants, and emergency financial assistance. Another smallest all slide appeared. Fiast EFNDN 28 Melion gasps spread across the ballroom, not because of the number, because no one knew, not even my own children. Ryan slowly turned toward me. You never told us, I answered quietly. You never asked. He looked down. That simple sentence hurt him more than any argument could have. Because it was true. For years, every conversation had been about what I could do for them. Never what I still dreamed of doing. The chairman wasn't finished. There is one final announcement. The foundation will be governed by a permanent board. A list of names appeared. Harold Simmons, Angela Ruiz, Dr. Marcus Bennett, Linda Cho, former coworkers, former employees, people who had stood beside me through floods, blackouts, pandemics, and impossible deadlines. Not one relative. Ryan searched the screen again, then looked at me. My name isn't there. No. Claire's isn't either. No. He swallowed hard. We're your family. I nodded. You are. But this foundation isn't an inheritance. It's a responsibility. You have to earn responsibilities. You don't inherit them. After the ceremony ended, people stayed for nearly 2 more hours. Not because dinner was exceptional, not because of speeches, because they genuinely wanted to spend time together. One by one, they shared stories, laughed, cried, introduced grandchildren to old coworkers. I stood in the middle of it all, watching complete strangers treat me like someone worth celebrating. Then I noticed Ryan sitting alone near the back of the ballroom. For the first time all night, nobody was talking to him. Not because they disliked him, because they didn't know him. He had spent years assuming family automatically gave him a place in my life. These people had earned theirs. As the last guests began leaving, Ryan walked over carrying my coat, something he hadn't done since he was a teenager. I owe you an apology. You already gave me one. No. He shook his head. That one was because I got caught. This one, he struggled to continue, is because I finally understand. I waited. I kept thinking retirement was the end of your story. He looked around the ballroom. I never realized it was the beginning of another one. For the first time that evening, I believed him, not because of his words, because there was nothing left for him to gain. No business, no inheritance, no board seat, only a father standing in front of him. 6 months later, the foundation opened its first training center. Former factory workers learned computer skills. Retired mechanics started consulting businesses. Single mothers over 50 found careers they thought were gone forever. Every week, someone walked through our doors believing life had passed them by. Every week, they walked out believing otherwise. Ryan volunteered every Saturday, not because I asked, because he did. Claire organized fundraising events. Melissa mentored job seekers returning to the workforce after years away. They didn't become board members. They became volunteers. Exactly where everyone else started. Last spring, we gathered again, not for a retirement, not for a wedding, but for the graduation of our first class. 112 people crossed the stage, every one of them beginning a new chapter after believing their best years were behind them. As the applause filled the auditorium, I looked at Eleanor's photograph hanging in the lobby. She had been right. The people who truly love you show up. Not because the invitation is convenient, not because everyone else is watching. They show up because, to them, you are the occasion. And that was the greatest retirement gift I could ever receive.